Hello and welcome to week 6 of LIBS 301. This week we will be looking at applying and acknowledging. So for required materials for this week to look through, we have our week 6 instructor video, which is this video here, the YouTube video of the basics of citing and referencing in APA 7th edition, as well as a video of quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. We also have 2 supplemental materials, so the APA 7th edition, the basics of APA in-text citations, as well as APA in-text citations, multiple authors, and missing information. This week we do have one assignment due, which is our in-text citations post. We also have our APA style guide materials. So again, if you're looking at the book in the document, it is listed where in the book it is located, but we have the basic principles of citations, the parenthetical versus narrative in-text citations, paraphrasing, and quotations. So for this week, we are looking at 2 information literacy concepts of applying and acknowledging. So our final 2 of our 5-step process. So for applying, we're incorporating information found into our specific project, and acknowledging we are crediting that original source of information. So in-text citations. What are they? So these are a reference made within the body of a text alerting the reader to a source that has informed your work. These will include the author's last name, the date of publication, as well as the page number, and is used for both direct quotes as well as paraphrasing and summarizing. So making sure that anytime you use the ideas or words of another person, that you are adding in-text citations. So for non-direct quote citations, we have 2 types of citations with the paraphrasing and summarizing, and often with these, we're adding in information, and how you present the information and incorporate that in and introduce these sources is what we're going to talk about here. So first we have our parenthetical citations. So with this, the author's name and the publication date are not mentioned within the text. They appear in parentheses after the information. So what this means is the information, the quote, the source that you used, the information is presented, but you never mention within kind of the flow of your text who the author was. So for this example, we're talking about social media users, and it gives all of this information, but at the very end, we have our parentheses, Picton et al., who is the author, and then 2018. So this, we're kind of adding everything before, mentioning the author at the very end. Now for narrative citations, the author's name appears within the running text, and the date needs to then appear immediately after the author's name. So that's kind of something a little bit different when you're doing narrative citations. So the author's name will appear wherever it is logical and most logical within that sentence structure. So for our example, it's participants in a study by Picton et al. And here we have to pause, put in our date. They shared different content on different social media sites, etc., etc. So for these 2 styles, our parenthetical and our narrative citations, it's really important to mix and match these as you go through and include both of them in your paper. Why? It's because it makes your writing more interesting. As someone who's reading through your guys' work, I like to see a variety of ways that you introduce your sources and the people you got information from. If you're always doing exactly the same thing in exactly the same format, it feels very robotic. So mix and match and play around with how you're introducing your sources and your information here in our narrative and parenthetical citations. This also is the same thing as when you guys are creating your information. So if you're doing direct quotes, if you're doing paraphrasing, if you're doing summarizing, do a little bit of a variety of all of these because it makes your writing more interesting. So a few in-text citation notes. So when you're using a parenthetical citation, the end of the sentence punctuation comes after the parentheses. So this means you're going to give the information, but before you put the period, you're going to have a quotation mark, you're going to have color, your period, color, your comma, your date, end of parentheses, and then your period. So author, date, then close it off. Now, if you're providing a direct quote, the order of punctuation is quotation mark, parentheses, and then the ending period. So here We have our full quote, which is going to be in quotation marks. You aren't going to add that final punctuation mark within the quote, but you're going to do an open parenthesis, the authors, the date, the page number. You're going to close the parentheses and then add the period. So if you guys have questions about how to create these in-text citations, how to format your phrasing and words, please reach out to me. I am more than happy to look through your materials. So editing these things together for your final essay. So you want to pull your found information together and organize it in a logical order to make your arguments. You want to add in a mixture of sources throughout your essay to support your argument, and you want to introduce your sources, add in the information, and then tie in their information with your arguments. So what I mean by this point is I don't want any hit and run kind of quotations or pieces of information. I want you to kind of create a little bit of an introduction of the idea, the piece of information that you're going to argue with. You're going to add in your supporting argument with your outside source, and then you're going to tie it together with your own thoughts again. So you aren't going to start with information from an outside source and you aren't going to end with an outside source. You're going to have that nicely in the middle of your own thoughts. Also, make sure you're using a combination of direct quotes, paraphrasing, and summarizing, along with both parenthetical and narrative in-text citations. Again, it makes your writing more interesting and it really adds depth to your research and writing process. So for this week's materials to look at, we have our week 6 instructor video, the basics of citing and referencing in APA 7th video, the quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing video. Make sure you're looking through those. If you have questions, please reach out. We also have supplemental materials to look through. This week, you might want to look through these and really kind of dive into it because it will help you as you're developing your paper for next week. So we have the APA 7th edition, the basics of APA and text citations, as well as the in-text citations, multiple authors, and missing information. Also look through the APA style guide information. If you have questions with that, please reach out. I am always here to help, and this is the week that it really starts kind of getting a little bit more challenging and difficult and where questions tend to pop up more, so please feel free to reach out. The assignment for this week is our in-text citations post and response. So here we're discussing your comfort and confidence levels when interacting with in-text citations. Our initial post is due on Thursday, as always, and our response to the classmates is due on Sunday. Now, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out. We can set up a one-on-one meeting, either virtually or in person, and walk through whatever questions that you guys have. And if not, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.